So with that, I would like to introduce the next panel, and I would like to give it over to Dino Anderson. He's the Chief Diversity and Impact Officer at Articulate, and also a company who is fully behind what we are doing here, and therefore they are also a sponsor, and I greatly appreciate that. With that, Dino, please take over. It's yours.
So, excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. And definitely, Articulate is definitely a sponsor here. And we have a proud and wonderful group of articulators in the back that I just want to give a shout out to for being here today. Hello to everyone online that is watching and staying with us. And for those people who will be watching recordings of this, really great. So, as you can see, we sat down in the order of our pictures for no confusion. So you know everybody's name. So as you see here also, right, the title of our session here is Inclusive AI, Shaping the Future of Platforms and Products. And really what we want to focus on today, you're going to be hearing some of the same themes that you've heard earlier, but we're going to do a little deeper dive, particularly talking about the space of product inclusion and what that means, how that can shape and strengthen a workforce, how that also leads to product innovation, and lastly, how we think about, which is really important when you're doing this kind of work, especially in a capitalist system, you want to make sure that you're expanding the consumer base, right? So we're going to talk about those particular things. One thing that you should know about all of us here, which is really important, we're all immigrants. So if you're ever curious about what immigrants look like and what they contribute, this is this panel. So let's start with product inclusion. And so because the term may be new to some of you, I would love to turn over to you, Savita, to give us a little bit of more context around what is product inclusion? Who are the players to make that happen? And more importantly, like, what do we have to think about in terms of principles or actions to make sure that it's holding everyone accountable to contribute to something that's called product inclusion?
Yeah, thank you, Dino. Hopefully I'm not too loud. Just the quick bit of introduction about myself, because this will tie into the inclusion discussion throughout this panel. So just to give you a background, I was the first woman engineer in my family. I was the first one to come to the US. I had no role models. I was very glad I grew up in a community where there were scientists around me. Of course, there was one woman I knew, my dad's colleague, but otherwise it was all men who were scientists. And so for me, the question of inclusion started very early in my entire life, my personal and my career journey. I came to grad school. I came here to Silicon Valley in 98, at the beginning of the whole internet boom. And I look around me, there were very few engineers. I didn't think of it that early in my career, but we were building these really beautiful products which powered the internet. Each of these boxes cost $500,000 sometimes. And it started worrying me because every time I would go home to visit my family, it was almost like these are two different worlds. Between Silicon Valley and where I went home, I visited my village where my grandparents lived, and it was a complete day and night difference. There was no television, forget there was no running water even. And so to me, the question of inclusion was very basic, which is like started with the discussion around digital inclusion, that there is a whole entire country which is not included in this internet era. So that's where the question of product inclusion and digital inclusion starts. Fast forward to where we are with AI inclusion. And ChatGPT just kind of blew it all up in the open with all the language-based models. And the first thing I noticed was it's all English language. And my mother tongue is Konkani. And for those of us who are all immigrants and who have experienced imperialism in all its forms and shapes, Konkani literature was completely destroyed in the 1500s during the Portuguese invasion. So there is no written language for my mother tongue. And the only way I pass my language to my daughter is I insist on speaking it at home. And so when you think of product inclusion, it starts with very foundational aspects of how we build products and for whom. Are we just building it for the Silicon Valley, this bubble, this echo chamber, or are we building it for the whole entire world? The second thing is to think about, when we think about AI inclusion and product inclusion, humans we perceive in many different senses. Language is just one piece, right? We see, we hear, we have reflex action, which is combined with our visual, our senses, other senses. Deaf people can still operate. They can go to college, they can learn, right? But how are we including them as we think about the products and AI models that we are building? And what are the different kinds of data? And we'll go into data a little bit more, but how are we building these products? So I want people to think about inclusion in multiple dimensions. Starts from the basic. What is the definition of inclusion? It can be language, race, gender, different ethnicities, dialects. Even in English language, there are so many different languages. I want to just have a quick hands of how many people feel Siri or Google understands them.
Don't understand.
Understands them. Can we get a show of hands when they? Okay, be brave. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly. Yeah, see, Siri is only English. That's not inclusive. Second, I would like Siri to talk in Konkani so my daughter can continue to learn and listen and respond, right? I have a way to continue. If I die, she doesn't hear Konkani, right? And so it dies, the language dies with me. And so for me, that's important. That's inclusion, right? So for example, like face recognition, even we were just discussing before the panel. 5 years ago, face recognition at the immigration counter just failed for us. And we had
Not
to
a bad
start.
thing. Agree with that. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's just the discussion we need to have on product inclusion. These technologies are not inclusive even for us immigrants with different English accents right here in Silicon Valley. And I think we need to have a more deeper discussion of how AI models and the future of AI will be built.
Oh, you want from me? Okay, so hello, everybody. My name is Irina Ada, and I am CTO for Microsoft. I focus primarily on the partnerships. My background is, I think, very similar. I like what Amy said. I am certified renegade. Every time somebody say, you cannot do this, I pretty much say, why not? And I've done there. So my background is in math. Originally was in math and physics. I kind of renegade, said I don't want to do this, went to tourism and hospitality, which is why would I do this? I don't know. But when I moved, then I decided my country is really not an interesting country. So I decided to move to United States, and I went right when the internet happened. And the first conversation will start to happen around internet, and I was, what the heck is that? And what you doing with that, right? So it was very interesting. So I went back to school and got the computer science from UCI. Very similar situation. I was one of the few girls and ladies was in the class. It was very interesting when I graduated and I went to work for consulting firms. One of the guys said, hey, I remember you from the class. And I'm like, I don't remember you, because literally I was two of us and it was a lot of them. So it didn't really look like that. So I was happy that, he remembered me. That's great. But then, as I was doing consulting, I really was curious about what we talk about, which is human aspect of technology, how we as a human interact with technology. Technology is not for robots, it's for us. And technology should enable us to be better, be more functional, have more productive and fun life. But then I went to industry because I was thinking, this is amazing. So where can I go? So I went to GE, industrial world. It was very funny because when they hired me, when they reached out to me first, they said, we want you to come and help build us digital internet. And I said, I don't know anything about refrigerators and microwaves. It's not my field. They're like, we're doing a little bit more than just that. We actually built aircraft engines and we built healthcare system. Like, wow, I have no idea how I can help you, but I'm interested. So I came, and one of the interesting conversation in that time was that when I came, I was the only female in the room. I was the only technical architect that have any understanding of the cloud at the time. But there was the guys were sitting at the table telling me how clueless I am about industries, and I don't understand how trains works, and I don't understand how you build aircraft engine. So I took my table and moved my table away from these guys, right? Because I said, well, that's fantastic, but what can we do about that and how we can change the business? And again, talking about inclusion, we sometimes want to fit, we want to belong. This is our natural desire. But I think when we're talking about inclusion and especially building product, sometimes you just need to let something to die, like literally let it die and build something new. And this is the way sometimes to bring inclusion in the products, right? So we talk about this. So when in GE, I built a whole new brand new business on that side. And then Microsoft came and it was fantastic experience. When I came, it was opposite. I was a technologist, but the job that I applied was implied that you need a business knowledge. And again, they said, well, you're a technologist. What do you know about business? I'm like, I know a lot about business. I just came from GE. And they're like, well, but you're a technologist. And again, I didn't like that boxing of me. I'm like, try me, just hire me and see what's going to happen. I was one of the first people that was on the deals of $1 billion cloud business that Microsoft started to build. And it was interesting because, as I said, what Amy said, absolutely true. Just jump in the deep pool, right? The only thing that's going to kill you is going to be your fear. That's the only thing that's going to kill you. So if you stop afraid and just take this ownership and go and do something, that's become fantastic. So inclusion for me, when we're talking about building the product, sometimes it's not about try to convince anybody to do something, try to change the system. We're living in such an amazing time right now that you actually can build something absolutely new, absolutely different, and it doesn't exist. That's the most fantastic part of that. And so today, majority of you, when you're thinking about AI, I highly encourage you to open up. This is when we talk today, and it was amazing talks about models, about how we build the models. It's amazing. Models is amazing. But there's a whole world out there that today we can build applications that will transform healthcare, that will transform how we think, how we work. It will transform entire society. So you do not need to convince anybody that you belong somewhere. You need to go and freaking build something. Okay, so that's my inclusion story. So I will tell the Kai.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Kai Nunez. I go by Kai. You see Yakaira up there, just in case you're wondering how to actually pronounce it. So I have worked at Salesforce for 14 years. I finished my career at Salesforce in August. So I'm in the beginning of trying to define what my next is going to be. But during my time at Salesforce, what I've always been deeply passionate about is expressing the needs of users, of consumers, and bringing and weaving the needs of the human experience into the way products are built. Why is that? Well, I pursued this degree called Human-Computer Interaction in 2003 at DePaul, after I had actually completed 2 other degrees, rhetoric and Spanish, which didn't necessarily map to my degree in HCI. And I focused on artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, it was a little too early. Nobody was doing AI. AI was boring. Actually, it wasn't boring. We had this thing called Nuance. We had Dragon speaking naturally. It was really freaking cool. You had to train it yourself because you speak differently from everyone else. And I say that now because we have strayed away from that as a basis, because we are becoming homogenized by these large LLMs. And so for me, the perspective of product inclusion starts at the very beginning, how we're actually making these freaking products, right? The product development life cycle is kind of broken right now. And I think we can all agree to that. Why? Because the part that people always cut first, because it takes too much time, is doing the human research, right? What are the user's needs? Why are we building this thing? Who cares Where is the profit going to be? Who has the power in this system? Those questions are not asked. We just go straight to build, right? And so as we leave people out of the conversation, that's where the problems with product inclusion start. So what I posit to everyone here is as you are going and embarking upon this journey, you will be tasked to run fast, build things, break things, do all the things to the things, right? How about slow down, ask why we're building the thing, talk to people who will be impacted by it, talk to the target consumers, make sure that you have enough data, both telemetry data, qualitative and quantitative data, talk to the data scientists, be aligned, and have that be the basis of your discovery moment in your product development lifecycle before you rush to go build and then test. I do believe sincerely that with this product inclusion journey that we're embarking upon, that we do have regulations that are in place today in Europe. We've talked about this before already. But that can be a rubric, that can be a set of heuristics that we use as a framework to set our own guardrails so we can actually innovate even more and thereby create more inclusion in the way that we are building our products so that we can see all of ourselves represented in the products that we are building, because that's what I want to see. That's the future I want to see for myself.
So I want to go along this point around, right, jumping in, getting into and building the products. Right now, the state of affairs and how it looks, we've talked about this today, and those people who are building products are, by and large, homogenous, right? And these are the people who are creating these products for a mass consumer base that oftentimes when they're building these things because of their flat spots, I like to use that instead of blind spots for ableist language, flat spots, right? They are not building in consideration for a broad swath of people. So I'm curious, what kind of recommendations do you have when we're thinking about the skill sets that these product developers need to have in order to, right, rethink how to build more equitably and inclusively? What are some of the things that you've seen work from your professions?
Yeah, so I'm a product lead now for the speech and computer vision features at Cisco. We were a small startup which got acquired by Cisco in the pandemic. So my journey in AI, you could say is like 5-6 years old, maybe. I just learned my way through the technology. So not just for the young people, but even mid-career. I know there are a lot of mid-career people just jump right in. Everybody is new, don't feel intimidated. So I think in our earlier discussions, when we were thinking about this panel, the transition from the internet to the cloud and to AI, we are in a new transition now. And so the roles of people, what roles people play is going to change, whether it's engineering, data science itself as a field is fairly new. And a lot of companies are still building up the skills in that space. Like even at Cisco, for example, the data science role itself is fairly new, I think in the last 5 years or so. And so when we come in as product managers and product leaders, we are wearing a different hat, like what she said, right? I'm already in the mindset of inclusion. But like you said, Dino, there are people who are not coming in with that mindset. And so they are approaching with, let's go build, like Yakaira said, right? Like, and I see that with my colleagues. And in each use case, the research you need is very different. For example, we are in the deep tech, deep digital signal processing space. So audio, I'll just take an example, right? Like when we think of speech, you think of the speech that's coming out of my mouth. But before that, before the speech comes out of my mouth, there are frequencies in which I speak. The human voice, I mean, if you go back to the basics, human voice is in the speech frequency range of 2 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz, like those of you, right? So 20 kilohertz. Different people can hear different frequencies. Different people speak in different frequencies. I'm Indian. Indians tend to speak very fast. And so even the adaptability of the model to my voice and my frequency is going to be different from your voice or from your voice, right? The intonations in my voice and how I generate that speech from my mouth, from my stomach, is going to be different. And you have to think about all these things when you think about product inclusion, because the models I'm building, which is very simple. I mean, if you think of it, it's very simple. The problem we are trying to solve, we are trying to separate human speech frequency from all other frequencies, like the HVAC, the room reverb, all of that. And so you need people who understand the technology, the people who are also understanding what it means for diversity in this context, because it is very contextual. When I go to computer vision models, again, it's a different context. I'm looking at how people see, different people can see different colors, right? People are of different skin tones. I had to go and tell the engineers, do you really understand there is basic physics? Because light reflects on light skin tones, dark skin tones absorb light. And so when you are designing and doing computer vision models, you have to think about physics and how it interacts with different skin tones. And so these are like very basic foundational things, and the role of product management has completely changed in this new field.
I can add some. So I think, awesome. So I think I want to bring a different perspective in some cases when we're thinking about actually building a products on top of the technology side. So a lot of times I think when we look through evolution, as you said, when originally mainframe come out, was a pure technology driven change. So a lot of product management was technologies. They were the computer science people or emerging computer science at that time. Then we have, when we went to the desktop, it's again was technologically driven revolutions. And then when we come to internet, is again, so a lot of companies today build their product management capabilities that focusing on based on engineering, rather than what Kai was talking about, understanding complexity of how users interact with that. AI revolution is super different. It's if everybody in today, we hear a lot of times when we're talking about AI as a technology, AI will transform the society. In AI, if you, for example, if you heard Mustafa Suleyman, who was the founder of DeepMind and also now a CEO of Microsoft for AI, he has a great book called The Coming Wave. One of the things he's talking about is that AI will be very similar, AI and synthetic biology will be very similar transformation as the electricity was for our society. So if you think about that, you start to realize that, first of all, question should not be how you build this, but what you're building and why you're building that. And this is the role of the product managers. And a lot of times when we're talking today about building system on top of the large language model and so forth, back to what Sky is saying, why are you building this? What's the point of that? Who is your customer? How they interact that? If you're talking about changing healthcare today, we're talking about that, again, if it's driven by engineers, and we see a lot of, I have a fortunate enough to work last year with a lot of startups. It's very technically driven startups, but you need medical doctors because machine, you put you're putting data into the models and something coming out of that, and you're asking engineers it's the right or wrong answer. We don't know. But that's why we have a problem that our focus on women healthcare is so bad. Like a lot of startups today, we don't have enough startups that's focusing on women healthcare. And coming back to one of the situations we're talking about, there's actually not enough data. It's actually not enough data because majority of medicine for the last 1,000 years was focused on male. So how do you actually, the new opportunities in this space, how do you generate the data? Where's the data coming from? So when you're saying there is a tons of data and we're talking about inclusion, in some of the areas, we have actually data deserts. We don't have enough data. We do not now know how to do this. So we have to generate the data. So again, how is a great question. And it's very engineering focused question. And that's what we were learning for the last 30 years in engineering, that you focus on how. But instead, if you start to focus on why, who is your customer, Where's this data coming? Is that data is actually have all the information that you need? That's become a big question of inclusiveness and focusing on that. Kai, you want to add something?
I couldn't agree more. I think you think about manufacturing being the basis of the way that we build products today, right? And it's all siloed, and there are these handoffs. What does AI do? It flattens that completely. So the way in which we've been building products today creates these sort of data lakes. They create these data silos that don't serve anyone other than the individuals that are holding the keys to the castle. So then it is incumbent upon us to think about different ways to flatten the way in which the data is communicating across these layers, to democratize the way that data is crafted, collected, created, to bring that back to the persons, these people in this room, so that you have some sort of ownership of that data, so that then you can be paid for your data. Because ultimately, what is data? I think that we lose sight of this. And at the very crux of it all is what I believe is sort of at the root cause of problem inclusion, a product inclusion right now, the problems around it, is that we think that data is an abstraction of humanity, but it is literally us. It is a representation of us. So because we keep on losing sight of it and call it data, right? Then all of a sudden you can monetize it, and then you lose sight of the fact that it has impacts. So two things, like keeping in mind that data is people, data is humans, data is your mother, data is your brother. Okay, right? That one thing can change the way that we build products going forward so that we can be inclusive. But also thinking about the entire way in which we build products and the way that it's all siloed. And we have the opportunity to change the way products are built now. We just have to be willing to do it.
So on this point of
Have a
being,
question.
oh, yeah,
Let's go to questions. You guys
Have a
never get
question?
me time.
Yeah. Yeah, who's gonna run the mic?
Dinah likes to run. Look at that.
Caller, you say what?
Really great remarks, Ala Yusuf, Stanford University. So just one question is, how do you see inclusivity happening through the product line? I think one of the main challenges we challenge with is building standards and principles, but we don't really have a vision of how this translates when a product is being developed, as well as there is a problem of, whoever uses the technology are not representative of full public population. So we're building products, it's really, serving specific population that's using that product. So how should we be thinking around that in the next era of AI?
So can I start? Yeah. Okay. So one thing, I think I love read books, so you will hear me a lot of references. But Ben Horowitz has a great book called Doing Hard Things. I forgot Hard Things, Doing the Hard Things. He actually, one of the questions is we sometimes asking question how something should be done versus asking what we can do about that, right? So product development, if you're talking about product development, one of the primary job of the product development, product managers or product leaders is to define who is your customers, right? Because when we're talking about abstract, like you said about, when you're talking about its data or there is a customer, majority of the product should start with definition of who's your customer is and how you work with them, right? So I think starting from the back, like slow down. Just because it's done so many times, can you slow down and challenge the system and start to think about who is my customers? Because who is your first customer on the product will determine how your model works. So if you think about this, we heard today about LLMs training, but in reality, when you're talking about AI systems, the training goes, then you somehow deploy it, right? And it's become living thing, because what you want to do, you want to do reinforced learning at this point. You want to learn how the people use the data. You want to learn what they're doing with the system, so it's become better. So if you bring all the white male as your first customers, what do you think that system will learn, right? If you bring immigrants, what do you think that system gonna learn, right? So the product managers actually the most powerful people in organization. And sometimes, like you said, people need to shift their minds and think about what your job is and who is in charge. Engineers are not in charge building product. Engineers are building and writing the code. Product manager is empowered to figure out who's your customer, how you're gonna gain the data, how you understand inclusively what this representation is, and how this product is gonna be used and how you're gonna learn. So I think changing your mind and shifting understanding that power belongs to product managers become an important conversation.
Yeah, I would also add that, people are getting very obsessed with models, but the models by themselves are quite useless unless they're part of a end product or it has to sit within a system, right? I think Rama talked about the LLMs and the use of that in sort of the IT workflow improvement, right? So we heard a lot of examples like healthcare. One of the things that was very much highlighted during the COVID times, and I know it seems so far away, was the pulse oximeter. I don't know how many of you have heard about the controversy with the pulse oximeter, right? Basically, for the whole African American population, it did not, I think it didn't detect the pulse rate properly, and it led to more deaths among the African American population. And there was like a whole pullback of the product, and the product companies had to go back and rebuild it. And I think those are critical examples of going back to what she said, that the role of the product manager is very critical in understanding the diversity of the population of the users and incorporating that backwards into how we are building the models, how we are evaluating. Where is my evaluation data set coming from? I think a lot of people think about training data, but most important is at the end of the pipeline, what's my evaluation data set and how diverse it is. And again, the problem with AI is it is so much probability and statistics that even the curation of eval data set is somebody deciding what the distribution should be. Like we were looking at in our work, we were looking at like the evaluation data set, and we said, oh, we have like maybe 15% of older age group with wrinkles, and the model was adding more wrinkles and white hair, and we had to pull back. This is a favorite project of ours. Anyway, so the observation was, oh, should we add more old people in the data set or should we reduce? And we were like, no, 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 the model is just adding more wrinkles. We shouldn't add more old people. So maybe it's okay. So it's a lot of just people guessing because we don't know how the models behave. And that's the hard truth. I think we all have to be humble enough to accept that we don't know everything what the models are doing. I think somebody else made a comment in the earlier panel that we don't know how the models are reasoning. The reasoning part is not clear to everybody.
I would add really quickly, systems design is what we have to do now, right? So educate yourself on systems design because that is the root of the complexity that we're sitting in right now. Also, you don't have to do it all yourself. Like we're asking PMs to do a lot of shit. Like you're going to be a researcher, you're going to be a data scientist, you're going to be a PM, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be an AI modeler. I mean, no, it's not reasonable. It's ridiculous. Build your team, ask for the help that you need. Don't try to do it all yourself because then you will be using ChatGPT to do your research for you and then it's gonna F it up, right? So lean out, systems design, do the best you can, right?
I think I just add one thing to this, one thing, which is should make it absolutely right thing. The new program manager, product managers are going to be successful who know how to network and build a community. You will not know everything. We've been all in this field for so long. If I done everything they told me I'm supposed to do, I would be right now in the crazy house, right? But I build my teams. I build people around me. I complement my skills. The next, actually, the most important skills that you can have in AI age, it's ability to work as a team, able to ask the right questions, and ability to challenge people. The rest of it you can learn. I believe me, everything else you can learn, you can program, you can learn how to build LLMs. Yes, it's difficult, but you can learn it. But if you don't have basic skills, you're gonna fail in the age of AI. I will tell you that. Yeah.
Hi, first of all, shout out to immigrants. I'm a first generation Haitian American. And I think we are definitely the engine of innovation in this country. So hats off to you all. So I have a statement and a question. So my first statement is, it is important that we centralize the lived experience of the people most in need in everything that we're doing. And I fundamentally believe the systems need to be designed for the people who don't have voices, right? That's how we make it inclusive for all. And going back to the comment about language and dialect, as someone who's served as an interpreter and having to translate documents and processes in multiple languages in healthcare, as you know, which can be way more complicated than it needs to be, I'm learning and seeing that language is living history, right? And language changes over time. We don't say groovy anymore, right? We say that's lit or that's hot. No, we don't. Just update your language, everyone. Right? And so for that reason, we need to have models that are able to learn like what's happening and why language is evolving. But to your point, if things are codified in English, and even the stories that we know and hear are in English, if we're not hearing the stories of people that speak other languages even, how are we accessing and again, centering the experience of those in need? And I want to propose an idea, or at least like get your feedback on this. This is where I think music can be powerful. So many of us as immigrants are learning other languages. That has been our entry point. Music, movies, that's a way for us to learn language, but more importantly, learn culture and history. So would like your feedback on that.
I'm actually dealing with this right now with my 10-year-old, and I totally appreciate it. We are a multilingual household. I'm Konkani, my husband is Tamil, and neither of our close family is around. So whatever my daughter hears is what's spoken at home, which we insist on. And so she is not exposed to, like you're saying, history or stories. And stories are in languages that we speak. I agree with you, music. I also think of dance. So we are having a battle at home right now, whether she should continue with her Bharatnatyam dance practice, which is an Indian classical, because to me, that's a way for me to tell her about stories, about mythology, about, and can AI reproduce that? I'm sorry to say no, it's far off, right? And I 100% agree. I told her, oh, you can train an AI robot to do Bharatnatyam dance. That's my challenge to you. I told her that, right? Because I mean, like, if she's going to learn about culture, about history, about Hindu mythology, whatever little religious thing I can give her and share with her, it's all through music. We don't play English music as much at home. It's all Tamil or Hindi, because that's the only way I can keep the language thing going at home, because everywhere else it's English otherwise.
I would love to add, my optimism is that AI does data capture, does people capture, right? We all have histories that are being lost,
Oh, totally.
right? Every day we have histories that are being lost. We have mores, turns of speech that are important to us. But AI is an amazing data capture machine. So what does it look like to have these snapshots of our lives captured so that that history never is lost? That an atlas that AI can produce for us on behalf of us, that we can curate because we want to have that. I mean, that's what makes me optimistic about AI, because that future is just almost there. I speak Spanish and I speak English, and because I was raised in Washington Heights a little bit and on the south side of Chicago a little bit, I speak a little bit of Yiddish, I speak a little bit of Spanish, I speak a little bit of English, right? I want to be able to have that version of English effectively, of the way I show up, to be captured and expressed. And maybe someday it would actually speak on my behalf. And then I don't have to do code switching because the tools are doing it on my behalf instead.
This is the startup idea, by the way. If you're listening, right? That's welcome. You're welcome. We just give you startup idea.
I'm
Just finish one thing that I want to add. I will call for action again. I will challenge everybody to think outside of the box. LLM do not need to learn what you just said. What we need is PhD in research, start to figure out how to augment. So there is a lot of, back to what you just said, system design. System design needs to change for AI specific system. We have, for example, if you're not familiar, LoRa, one of the new approaches, RAC, coming out, how you can augment the LLMs. So instead of thinking about how we can shovel everything in LLMs, which is, by the way, it's still developing. It's very early ages of that. So thinking about if you are a PhD and you're going in the space, think about beyond LLMs, small models coming out, that they're teaching stuff. So there is so much opportunities right now to rethink the whole field. Nothing's set up yet. By the way, you guys, so lucky, you in the beginning of the journey. And so you can completely shape how it's works. So think about other way outside of LLMs, how we can empower community, because we need to cheaper. LLM right now very expensive. We will get down on the price, but it's expensive. So is there other way to think about? Is there other opportunities to design the system that, as you said, inclusive, include stuff and include the history? So I think I will call for action to you guys as you're learning this. Think about other way. Do not put yourself in a box. Nothing yet has been committed yet. Nothing has been discovered yet. We're very, very early in this journey. So please, please imagine something new.
And data harvesting in other fields, don't forget that. The bottom line is data. Data is gold. And people. Like I want to recruit my whole entire aunties and uncles who can just record themselves in Konkani. That's been an idea for me for last 5 years.
I love this. As you can see, there's a lot of hands up and we can continue this
Sorry.
conversation, but I love this, but we have to move on. And let's thank the panelists here for
Yes, yes.
igniting the
It's my
revolution.
Is my mic on? Is my mic on? I have to say, first of all, thank you very much for this yet another phenomenal panel. I have to say this panel probably, I would have loved to add another 45 minutes because the topic is so interesting and personal for all of us. I literally was a product manager for many years, 30 years ago, for graphic cards, sound cards, and motherboards. I would love to go back to be a product manager. This is exciting. This is really, really exciting, challenging stuff. So a big hand for this phenomenal panel. Thank you.